As I invite our next keynote speaker, who gives us a comprehensive bird's eye view of the peanut ecosystem globally, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is the Chief Commercial Officer at Aldebaran Commodities, a global trader in peanuts, cashews, pumpkin seeds, and sunflower kernels. She has been instrumental in expanding Aldebaran's global reach and strengthening the commercial operations. Holding a Master's in Marketing Management from Tilburg University and a Bachelor's in Marketing and Business Management from Avans Hochschule Breda, please put your hands up for Ms. Nurcan Sayim.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing well. First of all, I would like to thank the organization for inviting me and the company that I represent, Aldebaran Commodities. I will start with the agenda. First, I will show some seeds about peanuts versus tree nuts. Then the European import worldwide into Europe of peanuts. Some bullets about the usage and purposes of peanuts. And last but not least, some market alerts and trends. Peanuts versus tree nuts. I decided to start this topic to show how big the role of peanuts are in the worldwide consumption compared to tree nuts. Below me, you can see the total supply of consumption of tree nuts and peanuts in shells in the world from the past 3 years. The yearly numbers are quite stable, but there are no huge ups and downs. However, if we look at the total picture, you see that peanuts take around 70% of the total supply and consumption. So you can see how important peanuts are. Obviously, pricing plays a role because it's the cheapest of them all, the peanuts. Tree nuts can be very expensive and the prices can change constantly. In the table below, I've highlighted Europe as a region. The figures here are more or less the same, except for the peanuts part, which is 80%. However, let's move on to the next slide. The previous slide was about in-shells, now about kernels. Here again, you see more or less the same figures, but the peanuts in the worldwide kernel is higher than in-shell. The European peanut import from where to where. Here you can see the worldwide peanut production in the past 10 years. It has grown quite a lot, with an exception in 2021, probably because of COVID. A lot of people stayed at home and used peanut butter for their breads or oil for their cooking. The last bar shows an estimation, but I can already confirm that these figures are correct. At this moment, pretty much all major origins have had record crops. For example, Argentina and Brazil. And this month and next month, China and USA will also be harvesting and expecting a huge crop. The top 3 producers are China, India, and Nigeria. China produces around 17.4 million metric tons of peanut in-shells, which is around 36%, is about kernels. The following slide shows the world's biggest exporters of the past 5 years, but for the kernel equivalent. 2 countries pop up when you compare the in-shells versus the kernel. China exports almost 80 million metric tons of in-shells, but on kernel basis, they only export around 140,000 metric tons. Argentina, on the other hand, their share in the worldwide export of in-shell is only 2%, but on kernels, they have a share of 18%. They need to shell a lot, and this is very good for Europe because Argentina is one of our favorite suppliers, which countries import the most and which countries are their key suppliers. The Netherlands is the biggest, and mainly because Rotterdam is located there, which is Europe's biggest port. Then you have Germany, Poland, Spain, and France. The key suppliers are Argentina, China, Brazil, India, Egypt, and surprise, the Netherlands again. In Netherlands, we produce big quantities for all supermarkets, especially peanut butter. I've also added behind each supplying country which product they export the most to these European countries, either kernel and in-shell or kernel and in-shell both. Here are a few examples. You can see the Netherlands and the role of Argentina as far as kernel. It's around 125,000 metric tons of kernels. So very important for Europe and Netherlands. On in-shell basis, the numbers are smaller, but you can see that the USA has a big role as far as in-shells. Behind them, you can also see the trade value. Next one is Germany. Interesting here to see is that Argentina is second as far as kernels, but on kernel-wise, Netherlands is the biggest. A lot of buyers from Germany use Rotterdam or Dutch suppliers to buy their peanuts. Compared to the Netherlands, Germany has three major suppliers as far as in-shell: USA, Egypt, and Israel. A third example is Poland. Here you can see that both Argentina is the most important for the kernels and USA for the in-shell. So where does Europe use their peanuts for? You have four usages. You can see from the size of each bowl how big it is. We mainly import it for conventional usage, so food. More information about it in the next slide. The second biggest market is the animal feed for the birds and the apes, etc. And then the third one is organic. Past 10 to 15 years, organic has been playing a big role in the European market. Growth has increased, but the past years it's stabilized, and especially this year, it looks like demand is decreasing. Consumers don't have, are not willing to pay that much for organic. Then the smallest one is oil crushing. It's very small in Europe, especially if you compare it to huge oil producing countries like China, India, and USA. What can you do with peanuts, consumption-wise? You can use them for snacking, to make peanut butter and paste, and for confectionery and bakery. You can use the in-shell and roast them. It's perfect for cracking them during a game night at the bar. The kernel come in whole, raw, whole blanched, split raw, and split blanched sizes. You can use the raw peanut with skin to coat them or to roast them. The same with blanched peanuts. When roasting, you can oil roast them or dry roast them, with or without salt. You can coat the peanut with all kinds of flavors. You can also extrude the peanuts and spray them for your snacking flips. You can make paste and butter from peanuts. You can chop them and use them for ice cream, or slice them for your cookies. You can also make powder for baking. Last but not least, the oil is very useful for cooking, especially in the ethnic markets. It's very popular. Some alerts and trends that are currently going on. First of all, European aflatoxin limits pesticide and health authorities selection. In the nut business, peanuts are very known for aflatoxin. It's one of the items with the most alerts, and a lot of attention is required. All peanuts must be accompanied by an aflatoxin certificate from origin, tested by an independent accredited laboratory and assembled according to European legislation. For example, if you have a container load, it needs to be sampled by minimum 20 kilo sample and needs to have 2 sub-readings. However, aflatoxin can change during the process. You can test the batch and have good result, but test the same batch again, you might get exceeding result. The European health authorities are very alert on this, and the major peanut exporters try to minimize this by selecting the best peanuts for Europe. The health authorities also keep track of this and apply random selection, and this can differentiate per supply and origin. At the moment, you have 0 selection on containers from Argentina, which is very fortunate for Europe because Argentina is one of our biggest suppliers. Brazil has currently also 0 selection. China has 10, USA has 20%, Egypt has 30%, and India has 50%. Pesticides is the same story, but luckily far less alerts than on peanuts compared to other nuts and seeds. Second element is import duties. At the moment, Europe applies 0 import duty on raw kernels and raw in-shell. It's not in our favor to have this because Europe is not a peanut-producing continent. For example, almonds have 2% import duty until they have reached their quota, then they become 3%. For roasted peanuts, there is an import duty, which is 11.2%. It's because to protect the roasting companies in Europe. However, import duties are usually related to topics, and as we all know, it can change by the minute. Then the next one, hand-to-mouth purchasing. Upon 5 years ago, the European processors and their customers, such as the supermarkets, closed big contracts from 1 to 2 years. Nowadays, it's difficult to get such contracts for a long period. Importers do not want to take the risk and have high stocks in their warehouses. Then the next one, the last alert, which is the weather. Something that nobody has in control because it's Mother Nature. When you're planting new crop, you do not know what the weather will do. You need enough rain, but you also need enough sunny days. You cannot wait too long with harvesting because of the size growth of the peanuts and have higher risk on aflatoxin. You cannot harvest too soon because you need mature size, especially 3842 per ounce, which is very popular in Europe. And to end this slide with more positive notes, why peanuts? It's a very good source for protein and plant base. So for people that have such lifestyles, it's perfect. This item has skyrocketed in the past few years. It's a very low-priced commodity. You saw the figures compared to tree nuts. In the supermarket world, there has been a shift the past 5 years. The ratio used to be 70% private label and 30% own brand. Now it's around 50-50. But the expectations that it will become 70% private label and 30% own brand. And what is a key factor for private labeling? Pricing. So peanuts can be very attractive, especially if you make mixed packaging. Finally, it's a product that has a stable supply and a constant demand. There are several big countries that produce, and demand remains quite high, especially if you compare it to other commodities such as almonds, pistachios, and Brazil nuts. Those prices can fluctuate a lot. I have now come to the end of my presentation. On a more personal note, for me it's very special to be here in Istanbul. I was born in Turkey, but moved to the Netherlands when I was 2. When people ask me about my background, I always use the coated peanut as a reference. My kernel is Turkish and my coating is Dutch. Thank you very much for your valuable time and wish you pleasant conference.